will be going this way, and here we'll get the abatement from sector 2 going this way. There's two different sources of pollution. In the book, this was the transport sector, and this was power plants. Two of the biggest sectors producing nitrous oxides. The transport sector is very diffuse. Millions and millions of trucks on the road going different places doing different things. Power plants, we know where they are. We license them. We have a way to regulate them. For certain reasons, it was easier for regulators to clamp down on power plants than it was to clamp down on diesel trucks. So what's important to think about is there's different abatement curves. So there was this marginal cost of abatement for power plants for sector 1. And then coming from this way, there was a lower and sort of broader marginal cost of abatement for sector 2. And so one way they did it in the talking about the book was this point that they didn't really put in the graph, but this is the total emissions. And they asked the power plants to clean up a whole, so this is where they put a regulation on sector 1. So they said, we need power plants to abate this much, and so this is the amount they got them to abate, and they could keep polluting this much. At the level of pollution that the regulators picked, the cost to the power plants to clean up was much higher than if they had tried and put that burden on the transportation sector. Like pound for pound on cleaning up nitrous oxide, you were spending a lot more per pound than if you had asked sector 2, the transportation sector, to clean it up. If you had asked all the diesel trucks to change their motor to burn a little more cleanly, it would have cost a lot less than what you asked the power plants to do to get this last amount of nitrous oxide out of their emissions. So the width of this is the total amount of emissions that we're going to end up with, and we're going to ask the different firms to abate different amounts. The other big part of this graph was looking at these different prices, and because this transportation graph was really flat, it was interesting to see that there's a whole bunch of prices at which it would have paid to get the transportation sector to do all of the abatement. Right? At any price above this price, the transportation sector would have cleaned up completely if we were just using prices. The way this regulation on nitrous oxide wasn't done on prices, the economists are looking later. They did it on, in terms of quantities, and transportation was done on standards. But the economists are looking later at prices and seeing that we're at an inefficient point. An efficient point where the price to clean up is equal between the two sectors is here. And there's some deadweight loss from requiring the power plants to clean up so much at this high price when we could have asked trucks to clean up. So there's a deadweight loss triangle from being from the inefficient point to the point that we're at. The point that the regulators have picked is inefficient. So yeah, there's a price up here at which is way above where cars would have completely abated the whole amount. And at the place where the regular quantity where the regulators picked, it would have cost far less to have cars abate. All right, now let's go to the one like problem set 4. So if we have a similar story, can we get to this sort of tradable permit story where let's say there are two firms that are the only sources of pollution, and we have a fixed amount of abatement that we want to do, fixed amount of pollution that we want to allow. Abatement of firm 1 is going this way. Abatement of firm 2 is going this way. So marginal cost to abate for firm 1, and then marginal cost to abate for firm 2. So again, we can say there is some efficient point where the marginal cost to abate for the two sectors is equal. And that is where firm 1 cleans up this much, and firm 2 cleans up this much. So we have if we give firms, in problem set 4 case, permits, and we just split the market in half, they can trade. So if we give them a certain amount of permits, they can trade to get to the point where their marginal costs of abatement are going to be equal. So if we're out at this point, the marginal costs to clean up are really high for firm 1, and they're really low for firm 2. So firm 1 can buy the rights, and firm 2 can be selling the rights. To get back to this quantity where they're equal. We don't know, so, and then we would say we don't know what price or how they're going to negotiate, but there's an amount of value here that's left on the table if they don't trade. If they stay at this point, there's a whole bunch of economic value that's left on the table. Because for firm 2, they can get to this point by selling, and if they sell somewhere in here, they're going to get a bunch of value because the cost to them to clean up is less than the price that they're going to sell their permits at. For firm 1, there's a whole bunch of value. Their costs are higher than what they would actually have to pay to get there. So because these costs are so high, they'd rather buy permits to get there. So we did that where we had, in the problem set, where profits were equal to the benefits plus the buying or selling of the permits. Right? And they could both come out higher by either buying or selling permits by the structure of where their benefit function was and where they wanted to be in output in the end. And we did this to solve, we did this with net benefits instead of marginal cost, but we did this and we solved for this price of the permits. That's how we knew it. We had an ability to solve for a market clearing permit price that allowed us to figure this out. All right. This is actually from chapter 13. I don't know why it says 12 here. So chapter 13 is the sort of regulation, the probability of getting caught, introduce some ideas of statistics. And I'll try and draw what they do here. So this, again, so this is pollution, dollars per pounds. Let's not use pounds. Dollars per kilo of pollution. And this will be quantity of pollution. And so there's some decreasing marginal benefit curve of emissions. We would also call this emissions. Marginal benefit of emissions. So the way they motivate on the book is there's somewhere, 1, 2, 3, where they make some sort of standard. This is how much you can pollute. So there's a regulatory standard. So they say there's a standard for emissions. And then if you go past this standard, if you pollute more than this standard, you'll have to pay a price. Price to exceed the standard. And let's say their price is, say, the price of $2 per kilo. Or let's put the price above. Put the price above so that, say, the $2 is up here. It's going slower and slower. Hope my computer doesn't crash. Come on. All right. Sorry about that. So we have a price up here. If you exceed this, then you're going to have to pay this price up here as a penalty for emitting. So this price is higher than the marginal benefits. So they're not going to do it. They're going to clean up and adhere to the standard. But what this also they introduce in this chapter is something about the likelihood of enforcement or let's say getting caught. What if there's only a 50% chance that you get caught? The regulator doesn't come by, you have a way that you can get out of it. So down here, there's $1 per kilo. That's your expected value. Expected value is the probability of outcome 1 times outcome 1 plus the probability of outcome 2 times outcome 2. So if you have a 50% chance of paying $2 times $2 plus a 50% chance times paying $0, then the expected value is $1. So if you have a 50% chance of paying the whole fine, 50% chance of paying no fine, your expected value is somewhere in the middle. So at $1, your marginal benefits are much higher than your expected fine. Right? So the fine is set high enough that if it's sure that you're going to get caught, it will cause you to clean up. But now, with this expected value of getting caught much lower, you have a much higher, so this is with certainty, and this is with expected value of a 50% chance. So you're going to pollute a lot more if you think there's a 50% chance you can get away with it. Because you're going to see some effective price of the regulation as being a lot less than the full price of the regulation. There's a huge chance that you don't have to pay. Your marginal benefits are way above $1. So you're going to pollute a lot more. And there's a big example in the book about regulations that were put on diesel trucks, and they got away with it for over 10 years. They ended up paying a huge fine at the end. It was probably less than the amount that they were able to sell more over the course of the 10 years, the amount that they could have more profits over the course of 10 years. So we can think about this from a policy term. Can you affect that probability? Can we do things to increase probability of getting caught? Can we do things to increase the probability of enforcement actions being successful? There's a lot of times where companies actually get caught being polluted, but they can sort of legislate and litigate, or more like litigate, or sort of avoid actually having to pay penalties. We had the Exxon Valdez oil spill, where obviously the oil spill happened, but they litigated, and ended up paying $500 million versus $10 billion as a penalty or as a fine. All right, so then we go into discount rates, and this is for the two-period non-renewable model. So there's a couple things that happen in discount rates. Is one, we have this idea of present value, right? So a future value is so this time scripts are now time. The price in period 1 is equal to the price in period 0 times 1 plus r to the t. So if t is 1, this will be 1. So let me do it in the general case first. The price at time t is the price in period 0 times 1 plus r to the t. The price at period 1 equals time period 0, 1 plus, hard time with the pen today. 1. So we could say that if we just had one time period and r was 5%, p0 times 1.05, or no, sorry, this is to the minus t. We're discounting if we're going into the future. Minus 1. So 0 equals p1 times 1.05. So we're discounting. We're moving back and forth between time periods. We did this for the renewable model. I'm losing my ability to erase as the class goes on. Can't erase. I just want to have enough space to draw this two-time period model in renewable resources. OK, so I won't erase. I will just go ahead and say if we have two time periods, this is the period 1. This is the period 2. This is the total quantity that we have. This is the quantity that we're going to use up in period 1. This is the quantity we're going to use up in period 2. and we want to figure out how much to use up between the two time periods. If we used it all up in period 1, we would have less available in period 2. There's some allocation between the two time periods that's going to be related to us shifting the profit, having some profits in each time period. And where this line is in the second time period is going to be determined by the interest rate. So if they were equal, if the interest rate was 0, we would have equal values between the two time periods. As the interest rate goes up, our value in the second time period goes less, 0.05. If the interest rate goes up even more, we're going to discount the future value even more. So discounting is going to decrease the value in the second period. The other thing that's going to do is where we're going to set this allocation between consumption in the two periods is going to give us a marginal user cost in the renewable resource model. I mean, the non-renewable resource model, we only have a fixed amount, marginal resource cost. So if we just consumed everything in period 1, we would have 0 marginal user cost. If we wanted to leave some in for the second period and sell some in the second period, we would have a slightly higher cost. We would have the cost of leaving some for later. This marginal user cost is going to reflect the value of having some for the second period. So from there, we went into this concept of the hoteling where we're using up a mine. We did this in the textbook for redwoods, old growth redwood. The hoteling equation in the simple case is just price goes up with the rate of interest. So price is just going up with the rate of interest. So we have some initial price, and we have price going up with the rate of interest at future time periods. We also did this for period 1 where we have this hoteling model here. So we have price and time in panel 1. We had another panel with price and quantity, and that would be using a demand curve. We had this third panel that didn't really have a lot of information on it, just had a way to reflect from quantity to quantity off a 45-degree line. And then finally, we had what we wanted, which was an extraction path. Panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4, where this path would tell us how much to harvest at any given point. The total harvest is the sum of the area under this curve, and how much we harvest in any given year would be the points along this line. So this is extraction path of the non-renewable. Okay, I'm running low on time, so I'm going to keep rolling. We did a renewable model. So a renewable model was planting a forest, and a simple forestry model has a growth curve of a forest. And we wanted, so this is the growth of the stock, the growth, and we could turn that into dollar values doing different things. This is the quantity that's growing. And we had a point where we had, to be very simple, we had average growth. So this is the average growth, just as a line from the origin, any quantity that's divided by where it was. If we have the average growth, we have two things that could happen to it. We want to look for the highest average growth. And in this curve, we're going to set it equal to the marginal growth. And the marginal growth is going to be equal to the slope of this growth curve. So where they're tangent, the marginal growth is equal to the average growth. So this is where our average growth was the maximum. So the standard harvest model would be this is where we would harvest and replant. And we would start growing again. And we would harvest again. And we would grow it again. We would repeatedly harvest our forest. And if we were maximizing average over the cycle, we would maximize the value of the land. So this is value. I mean, so it starts out just being a growth function, but then it ends up being dollars per unit.